I think I added the E. I think it was part of my education, being in France.
Uh-huh.
For a couple of years, I lived in Paris, and it is an Arabic word. Hindamme, of course, it means to possess kind of a good aesthetic.
Hello and welcome to the Mayman Show. We are coming to you from our studios in Riyadh, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And with us today is the founder of Hindamme, Mohammed Khoja. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
And Mohammed, before we start everything, I remember when we talked on the phone, you were telling me Hindamme, that's the beautiful part about the brand.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about that philosophy. Usually people want one name.
Yeah. I think I added the E. I think it was part of my education, being in France.
Uh-huh.
For a couple of years, I lived in Paris, and it is an Arabic word. Hindamme, of course, it means to possess kind of a good aesthetic or perfect harmony. And I added the E, just, I guess, a different way to spell it. Mm-hmm. And I actually like the fact that people call it Hindamme because they make it their own.
Okay.
So sometimes I correct them, sometimes I don't.
All right.
But I like the idea that, because that's what really fashion is about, is it's making it your own.
Making it your own,
Yeah.
having that self-expression.
Exactly.
Okay, that's cool. And so what's your latest fashion project? What are your latest endeavors?
I'm wearing one of the jackets that I designed from my latest collection, season 5.
Right.
That took me quite a while. I started designing that during a quarantine.
Okay.
So all the kind of thoughts and ideas I had at the time were to look at the brighter side and think of, because we're going through such a turbulent time. And I wanted to create a collection that was kind of more joyful and reminded us of the more important things in life. If I use colors that are kind of scientifically are mood-inducing, like lavender, gradients, graphics that are also kind of create this, are mood-inducing and create kind of a happy vibe.
Okay.
So that was the intention behind the collection. And aside from that, I'm working on a new capsule, and I'm doing some projects for different companies, mainly their uniforms. But one thing I really want to delve into is furniture design.
Okay. Why
So
furniture design?
I don't know. I think it's very interesting to me. I think it really, I've always loved furniture and objects, design objects, but I think during quarantine again, maybe it was a very pivotal time for a lot of us. I started focusing more on what are the objects in your home that represent you?
Okay.
So in a way, it is kind of fashion. It's things that represent you, but it's in your own home because there are things that express your style or your mood. I think that's what kind of garnered my interest even more.
Okay. And before we continue, as I promised, I'm gonna put the jacket on myself. All right. It's okay. So the color is mood-inducing.
Well, this is a sky blue, so it kind of, I believe it kind of pops.
Yeah. It's pretty
looks
nice.
great on you. Yeah, it's a nice fit. It's
I-
got a very boxy kind of 90s baseball jacket vibe to it.
All right.
Which
so
I like.
Was that like the creative thought process that you were going with? Like the first thing that you were thinking about is 90s baseball jacket. How do I take it to the next level?
Futuristic police officer.
Yeah.
Somewhere in between.
Okay.
Both those themes. I just wanted it to look kind of. I just wanted it to be kind of a statement jacket in a sense, but also easy to wear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty comfortable.
Yeah,
I
it's
like
pretty comfortable.
I like the pocket right here.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Could be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so aside from thinking outside the box to make creative baseball jackets and everything, you utilize a lot of elements from Saudi culture and Saudi subculture to reflect on a lot of your work. Why do you do it? Like, what
Yeah.
subcultures do you like utilizing the most?
That's an amazing question. Back when I started in 2016, it was really me kind of, because I was working in culture, and I was kind of being exposed to all these different, beautiful pieces of heritage from our country, and I really felt like compelled or even inspired, incredibly inspired to use them in my work,
Okay.
and also to highlight them and create representation. Because I think when I think of any type of creative endeavor, I always want to create something that is distinctive.
Okay.
So what makes us distinctive as Saudis, especially within design, is to look at the beautiful the elements that we already own and cherish, and if we can use them somehow and interpret them in our work, then you're creating a very kind of contemporary Saudi design identity.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
So
when did you first start applying this to your brand or your designs?
I applied it from the very first collection.
Okay.
So the very first collection I did was I integrated القط العسيري.
Okay.
So I hate using the word first, but I believe I was the first to do that at the time. And it was done in a very kind of forward-thinking way. It was done on at the time on fabrics that were kind of like neoprene, and there was also kind of nylon. So we had these more kind of futuristic fabrics or contemporary fabrics.
Okay.
But then we integrated elements of القط العسيري. And القط العسيري is an incredible rich heritage which I have so much respect for.
Yeah.
And when I studied it, I realized that each and every symbol is describes an element in the lives of أهل عسير, قبائل
Okay.
عسير.
Yeah.
It was telling their story in a way, but through design.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of the most beautiful way of describing design, especially when it's meaningful.
All right. So aside from using the design and colors, did you use the same way they extract these colors and use them? Or have you ever thought of doing that if you haven't?
That's a really good question. I mean, a lot of the colors, the original قط العسيري طبعا, it's taken from natural pigments.
Yeah. Natural resources.
Natural
available.
resources. But as a designer, I don't want to kind of, I mean, each to their own. But me personally, I don't want to copy paste. If I want to obviously respect the pattern, but I want to also interpret it in my own way.
Right.
When I used it back then, I neutralized the colors a little bit, just so that they are more wearable
Okay.
to the consumer.
Okay.
Yeah, and they look more kind of contemporary as well.
And when did you start your brand, Hindamme?
Same year, 2016.
2016.
2016. Yeah.
And what made you want to start this brand? Like, what inspired you to jump in and create your own clothing brand and design clothes?
I mean, it's really a passion I've had for a very long time, creating clothes and I'm creative in a lot of different senses, because I used to paint, I used to draw, and I also was I was writing for a while as well. I still write. Okay. But I really enjoy fashion design, because you're creating these pieces that become, the wearer's own. And it's like the most kind of it's the most engaging art form in my opinion, because when for example, when you're wearing this jacket now, it's part of your identity in a sense.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. So this is why it's so interesting to me, and I think I've always had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to create my own brand. Before Hindamme, I had a t-shirt brand that I decided didn't represent me anymore. Okay. So and because I didn't see there was a lack of representation of Saudi, design and elements that described our history or our kind of experiences. That's kind of another reason why that kind of really inspired me to create Hindamme as well,
Okay.
because I wanted to create something that was derived from us, from our culture.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you recall when you first took your brand, let's say outside Saudi Arabia? What was your experience like?
I've taken my brand outside of Saudi Arabia. It's been collected by museums, alhamdulillah, I'm fortunate enough that some of the pieces I've made
Hmm.
are considered to be museum
Worthy.
يعني worthy.
Yeah.
فالحمدلله. But in terms of selling, usually I sell through my online store.
Okay.
I've had some issues, from the business side of owning a
Retail.
fashion brand,
Okay.
especially when it comes to timing, getting on schedule,
Hmm.
and this is all related to production.
Okay.
Usually. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just from the way you're talking to, it's more of an art form rather than
No,
Yes.
it's definitely a business as well, because you have to sustain
All right.
and you have employees and كذا.
Okay.
I know you have to strike a balance. يعني. I
All
think
right.
it's important to strike a balance, because I think what most people don't know before they enter fashion is that, what you see on most of the catwalks or the fashion weeks are kind of excellence within the fashion brand. So what I've noticed is, what Dior is bringing down the runway
Hmm.
is not necessarily what's covering the bills or paying the
Yeah.
bills. So usually it's perfumes or
Hmm.
purses, depending on which brand. So yes, you just have to find that really uh, good equation where you are creative enough, and you're authentic, and you want to kind of present something that is new, and can make people think through fashion, but also at the same time you have to sustain the business side of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's get back to the museum that has your clothing line,
Mm.
and display. Can you tell us what the museum is, and why? How did they approach you? What did they basically tell you to say? We want to
Yeah.
take your clothing line and put it on display.
It's one of the museums is the Victoria and Albert
Okay.
Museum in London.
Hmm.
So they were expanding their museum and creating a design gallery, like a
Okay.
space for design that included furniture, fashion, and they approached me. They wanted one of the jackets I'd created that paid tribute to Saudi women driving. After the
Okay.
decision was made, as a designer, I just wanted to kind of contribute and celebrate this
Mhm.
decision, and
I think
it
I know the
was
jacket. It's a very famous one.
yeah,
Lots of women were wearing it
yeah,
on that day.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Okay.
I felt very inspired at the time, and alhamdulillah, the jacket, I think, although it was kind of very organic,
Hmm.
but I'm really grateful that it created this sort of effect.
Okay.
Alhamdulillah.
All right. And when you designed that jacket, lots of women were wearing it to mark that day. Did you how did you coordinate basically to have them have on your
Uh,
jacket during that day?
I mean, it happened. Again, very organically. The jacket's unisex,
Hmm.
so I made it so that men and women could wear it, and celebrate together. But my intention is just to. I felt personally it was a date that was important,
Yeah. It's a
and
monumental day.
yes,
Yeah.
and I felt that as a designer, I wanted to commemorate it
Okay.
in my own way.
Hmm.
So I created this jacket. Again, a lot of people, I don't want to just keep talking about jackets, because I design a lot of different things as well.
All right.
But I felt like it was a nice kind of a satin and lightweight as well,
Hmm.
and it had all the emblems, and inside of it had kind of a written statement.
Okay.
And the way it reached people is through social media.
Hmm.
Really, it was
Okay.
through social media. When I had put out the photos, It was a couple of different magazines that had wanted to also cover it and use it for shoots, and it just happened very quickly.
Okay.
And through social media, people found out about it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I was looking online that day, a lot of women who were celebrating that day had the jacket on. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
very
So
interesting.
it's great to have kind of my work be tied to something that
Like a
is
monumental day in the
yeah,
kingdom's history.
yeah,
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 that
exactly.
is.
Yeah.
And before you started your brand, you were telling me, you just said that you had a T-shirt brand that you felt didn't represent you anymore.
Yeah.
What was the T-shirt brand?
It was a t-shirt brand. I mean, I don't want to talk too much about it, but no, it was something I had done when I was in university.
Okay.
I started it during university, and it was more because I'm really into pop culture, and
Okay.
to growing up, I was very much into hip hop,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a mix of that. So it was just me, kind of. It was like, I'm proud of it, but it no longer represented
Okay.
what I wanted to create and my ambitions in design.
All right. So it
Yeah.
didn't reflect your creative direction.
No.
Maturing in the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And was that like how you got into the industry? Like, was that your first start, or did you do something else?
The t-shirt brand?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at
Okay.
the time, there wasn't really much going on. This was 2014. There wasn't. I mean, there was. Again, I am going to correct myself. There's always been amazing, incredible designers in Saudi,
Okay.
but I think there wasn't as much of a platform as there is today.
Okay. Yeah.
So now, alhamdulillah, we're growing, and there's a growing platform.
There's the Ministry of Culture initiatives. There's
Yes.
the Fashion Commission.
Exactly.
And how do you feel this is adding value in enabling local talent to flourish and thrive, aside from providing a platform?
Yeah, it's building bridges with the world. I mean, I think that for a long time we weren't invited to the table,
Okay.
and now that's no longer the case. Like, now we are a part of that, and we are, alhamdulillah, breaking a lot of walls and making incredible progress. And with the initiatives from the Fashion Commission, I think it's all about developing not just the aesthetic side of the
Okay.
brand, not the look and feel only, but also which is very important in design, look and feel, but also it's the business side.
All right.
Looking into getting to the buying schedule, then fixing kind of the really important issues to do with production. So anyone that gets into a fashion brand, depending what line they want to create, some alhamdulillah, we can find production locally.
Okay.
But most of the time we have to go abroad. And now manufacturing capabilities are starting to open up, but still we're not quite there. But I'm confident and positive that it's getting there very quickly.
Right.
I think that's really the kind of the initiatives that the Fashion Commission has been playing. Aside from, of course, as you mentioned, is highlighting the fashion brands and giving them a bigger platform and voice.
All right.
Yeah.
And why did you want to get into the fashion industry? What drew you, caught your attention, made you want to get into this industry and say, I want to basically carve my niche and leave an impression as Mohammed Khoja, designer?
Yeah. There's many different things, but I would say maybe it's just it's the feeling of taking an idea and then kind of translating it to something, to a material.
Okay.
I love that. I think it gives a lot of people a lot of joy. يعني, even though most of the works I've created, I don't work with my hands. Sometimes I do. I draw and do fittings, etc. But I think that's kind of the most appealing thing to me when it comes to fashion. Yeah.
All right.
And of course, there's the celebration of it. So seeing it, in different events or seeing it in magazines, and so that's always beautiful. But the most beautiful is seeing it being worn by the consumers, seeing it, being seeing the consumer engaging with your pieces and enjoying them. Let's say. Yeah.
And as a very proud local designer, what does it mean for the industry when international big brands hold fashion shows in Saudi, like we've seen on Al-Ula and recently with a lot of what's going on in Saudi?
I mean, there's different opinions, I guess, on that. I think it's a beautiful thing because any sort of highlighting of these beautiful regions in Saudi is great, especially as a Saudi. Would I like to see more integration with the local designers? Yes. Does it necessarily have to happen? No. But in the future, I'm hoping that that does happen. Having these events are great, but and mingling with those,
international community.
Yes, international community and these industry leaders even is very important for us. It's just we're in a stage where we're bridging the cultures. We're bringing the cultures together, and we're showing the global community, which most of them have not been exposed to us, that we have an incredible pool of talent and we have so much to offer.
Right.
And we want to alhamdulillah, we're very happy and proud, but also we want to be part of the globalized world. We are part of the globalized world, of course, but when it comes to fashion, we are very much on our way to becoming more global and having kind of what's the word I want to find? It's a kind of a scene. Having
our own fashion scene. That the whole world will look into. And
yes.
Are waiting to see what comes next. Right.
Hopefully something like there's in fashion history. There's the Antwerp 8, I think, or I don't remember the number, but it's a group of very kind of groundbreaking Belgian designers that came into the scene, and that became kind of a very important part of fashion history. And I truly believe that in Saudi we'll have the same effect, if not more, hopefully.
All right. And we were talking about fashion history. Now let's talk about your history a little bit. You're giving examples that you like to draw, you like to write, so you like to utilize your creative bones a bit.
Yeah.
So
I like to be busy.
Yeah.
But I also like to take breaks when I need to.
Yeah, I mean you need to find a muse and be excited to do something.
Definitely.
So what are your basically fondest creative moments growing up that you feel played a factor in the work you do today?
My fondest moments, it's a really good question. My fondest moments, I would say, was accompanying my parents when my mother, growing up, and I'm from Al Khobar. So growing up in Al Khobar, my mother had a shoe store, and she would import all of her shoes from Italy, from Milano and from Florence and Verona, and I just remember going on these trips with them. Normally we'd join them with a summer trip. So we'd go to Italy, we'd do, a drive in the coast, and then we'd go do a little bit of buying for my mom's store. But those were kind of my first memories experiencing the world of fashion and the industry and what it entailed, and so that was a very interesting experience for me.
Aside from doing the road trip, what sticks to your mind? Could be a shop, could be a piece of clothing that you saw along the way. It could be a shop owner. You just thought they were elegant.
Oh, I have so many. I mean, there's nothing that's more significant than that kind of stays with me all the time. But I've had a lot of different experiences. Alhamdulillah, I'm fortunate to have a lot of different positive experiences because as much as I can, I try to make the most out of, you know, my time, even my time here with you.
Right.
You know, just kind of getting into things and discussing kind of my journey. And I hope that discussing these things maybe it can inspire someone, or even you know, kind of give them some ideas of what they could do if they want to follow a similar path.
Okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes, you know, the individuals and environment around you plays a factor in what you do. Did you get
It's
any
true.
Did you get any support from your family when they found out you wanted to get into the fashion industry? What were their thoughts?
Mixed feelings. I think it's because they love me.
Yeah.
They're worried. They
Okay.
get worried. And the reason why is because, again, as mentioned, when I started at the time, 2016, there wasn't really a massive chance of you succeeding, you know. So obviously your parents, they always want the best for you.
Yeah.
So they were supportive, definitely very, very supportive, but and they did push me, and alhamdulillah, when they've seen the success of it, they kind of sometimes remind me that not to do certain things, to do other things, you know, just to position the brand in a better way.
Okay. They're very proactive in feedback now.
Yeah, they
That's
are
good.
constructive feedback.
Okay.
فالحمدلله, I'm very grateful to have that. But you know, I think at the time, I think with a lot of our parents, you know, being Saudi, being Arab, is they want to guarantee that you have, you know, a good,
You're comfortable.
bright
You're
future.
taken care of.
Exactly.
You have a bright future.
Yeah.
But one that's not too risky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't take too big of a risk.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, بس إنه I'm grateful that they've also they've been incredibly supportive, and alhamdulillah, and I'm grateful to be part of this scene, you know, the cultural scene in Saudi. There's
Right.
so much going on.
There's just way too much to keep track of.
Yeah.
All right. And before we wrap up this interview, is there a message you want to give to our Arab News viewers listening and watching and even reading?
Yeah, I mean, what I want to say is that make sure that you're giving yourself enough attention, and that you believe in yourself, and just, you know, as much as you can, pursue your passion, follow your dream. Anything is possible.
Okay.
Really, anything's possible. I mean, if you have that mindset, even if you fail 10 times, you're still gonna keep going.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good mindset to have.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't make it the first time, try again. Try
Exactly.
again until you
keep
succeed.
trying. Exactly.
Exactly.
You're not gonna succeed the first time, even if
Yeah.
people tell you they did. It's usually not true.
Yeah. It's usually trial and error.
Yeah.
With lots of error.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you very much for taking time to be here on the show with us. You know, I wish you nothing but the best. I love the jacket.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
waiting for my.
You wear it so well, Hissam.
Yeah, okay. You know, hint, hint. I'm waiting for mine to come in the mail.
Inshallah. Yeah. Very soon.
And tune into our next episode of the Mayman Show. Good evening and bye.